Hey everybody, this is Julia, and I just thought I would go through the elements of a good hive inspection now because most of us have our packages. It's probably more relevant than it was back on week 6. So I'm going to share my screen with you. If you haven't seen the slideshow, welcome. This is part of what I do when I teach Beekeeping 101 and 201. The name of the slideshow is Elements of a Good Hive Inspection. And before we start our hive inspection, we have to gather all of our materials. And also we have to kind of gather our thoughts. So this is how I organize my hive inspections. I know I'm going to work from the boxes on top down to the boxes on the bottom. And I know that when I am inside that box, I'm going to start with the frame that's closest to me. And I'm going to work to the frames farther and farther away from me. And then I'm going to put all those frames back in the box in the same order that they came in before I move that box off to the side and work on the next box below it. I am also going to really work with intention. You may have heard me talk in class about bee tai chi. I'm already going to have my suit and veil on before I get out to the bee yard. If I can, I'm going to pick a nice sunny day. I'm going to be out in the middle of the day. That's when the foragers are out working. So I have 50% less bees to deal with than if I were to open up the hive, right away in the morning or in the evening. And all of my tools are with me. And that's what you see here in the picture. That's my bucket of tools. So before I get close to the hives, I'm going to light my smoker. And I will light it and leave the lid off, suit up while the flame is moving around inside, and I'll puff the bellows a little bit, make sure that fire is good and going to stay there, stay lit for a while. Then I will close the lid to the smoker. Again, I'll puff it a little bit, and then I'll walk over to the hives. Once I get to the hives, I will use my smoker at the entrance and then underneath that outer cover before I take the lid off. So I'll just give a puff down below, give a puff up above, set the smoker off to the side. Don't really use it a lot unless the bees start to get loud. I generally don't use a lot of smoke. Now, as I walk up to the hives, I like to see what's going on, what kind of traffic's going on at the bottom board. And you might see either one of these pictures here before you. You might see this picture on the left where there's just a lot of bees. I see some pollen coming in. Or maybe I have a hive that looks like the one on the right where there's only a few bees. And again, there is some pollen, but whatever it is that I'm seeing, I ask myself, is this appropriate? Do I expect to see a lot of bees right now? Is it cold outside? Is it warm outside? What kinds of other conditions could be contributing to the hive looking like this? Okay, these are just observations. It's not like we should be seeing anything. These are just observations that help me get an idea before I open the hive up at all. All right, so I am all suited up, my smoker's lit. I gave a puff below at the entrance. I gave a puff up under the outer cover. I set my smoker off to the side. Like I said, I'm fully suited up. I got my bucket of tools with me. I'm going to open up the hive now. I'm going to take off that outer cover and set it upside down on the ground. I do this just because I like to keep things nice and clean and neat. And eventually I'll have something that looks like this picture here, where the boxes are going to lay crosswise or maybe diagonally. They're not going to go right on top of each other and completely match the rim, because I'm trying to keep that propolis to a minimum. Otherwise, it just gets really difficult to move things around. So this is what propolis looks like, and I'll use my cursor here. Hopefully you can see these little spiky things on the left, on the top of the frames. Those little spikes are pieces of propolis. And if you look to the picture on the right here, between the blue box and the white box, I've lifted the 2 boxes apart with my hive tool, and there's all this gooey, gummy, tan stuff underneath. And again, that is propolis. So some beekeepers select their bees because they produce or don't produce propolis. It's not something I'm concerned about, but I know some people do. Propolis is just resins that the bees have gathered from trees, other plants out in nature, and they use that resin to fill in and seal any gaps in the hive. So in these two pictures, you can see the propolis is stretchy and gooey, but it could look like this picture or this other picture here. These two on the right and left are both very stiff pictures of propolis. So on the left-hand side here, there is a gap between the inner cover and the telescoping outer cover. And the bees have filled that gap around the upper entrance with propolis. Same with the inner cover on the right-hand picture here. There's a gap between the inner cover and the outer cover. There must have been some kind of sagging or just a little bit of depth between the rim and the masonite there. And the bees have made a little rim around that opening of propolis. If you want to collect the propolis, if it's bothering you, you can certainly scrape it off. If it doesn't bother you, you can leave it there. It's your choice. So I have my tools, smoker, walked up to the hive, looked at the landing board. What's the traffic pattern looking like? I got the outer cover off and on the ground. Then I've got an inner cover. So again, I haven't opened and seen any frames yet. I'm just looking at the inner cover. Again, does this look appropriate compared to what I saw at the landing board? So the traffic on that inner cover depends on the size of your colony, the weather, what's going on inside the colony. So I kind of want them to match. They don't have to. Again, I kind of think it depends on if the colony's down below and they haven't moved up above yet, you know, or you're feeding up above. Just there's many different ways and things that contribute to the traffic on the inner cover. So again, it's not like they should look a certain way. Inner covers are just, you know, you observe, okay? We're just keepers of the bees. So the inner covers might have bees on the outside, they might have bees on the underside. It doesn't really matter, but you're gonna have to remove that inner cover to do your inspection. So if you want to take the bees off or not, that's your choice. If you want to brush them off, shake them off, that doesn't really matter. I don't think the bees care either. I really don't care. I usually set the inner cover up against the hive. I lean it so the edge is on the ground and the other edge is up against the bottommost box. But you can also just set it off to the side on the ground and the bees will be against the grass. Not a big deal. So now I've got the top bars of the frames exposed. And here is two really great pictures of good population buildup. So once there's a lot of forage and the numbers are nice and high, you'll have bees covering the top bars. We work from the top box down to the bottom box. So up above, we usually have supers. So our supers are going to be inspected. And then again, we're going to remove that, you know, the frames closest to me to farthest away. Then I'm going to put them all back in the same order and move that box off and go to the next box down. When you have boxes up on top, they're usually mediums. Sometimes they're shallows. Every now and then you find someone who runs only deeps. I would say this picture has black foundation. That's black, and usually we use that for brood. This also looks like it happens to be a deep frame. Usually mediums have yellow foundation for honey. I wanted to show you this frame because it's an older frame and I've reused it. So if you look on the outside, where's my mouse? Here's my cursor. So the outside, I've got some older comb and I can tell that it's darker and it's deeper. And then this comb in the center, I can see that it's newer because it's lighter colored and it's not as deep. So I think I just wanted to show that you can scrape the comb off of a frame and the foundation and reuse it. So going back to the box itself, what you're going to want to do is just kind of scan those top bars and see how many frames have been drawn out with comb and how much of that comb is filled. Now during a flow, we're going to add a new box when you have more than half of those frames drawn and filled. Super usually does not have brood or pollen. It's usually all honey. That's the convention we teach to. So this here is a picture of a typical super frame. So here, if you look inside the cells, it looks wet and shiny, and the cell walls look white. So to me, this means there's a great flow going on. I also want to note, you can see, where's my cursor here? You can see on the top bar that I left in the box, I wrote the number 19. So that's one way I use to keep track of how old the frames are when I should be scraping that foundation, get all that old wax off of there, because I like to keep things regenerated, I guess might be the word. I want to keep my wax, 1, 2, maybe 3 years old. I know that there have been a lot of studies that show that there's a chemical buildup, and it's harder, or the queens don't prefer to lay in older brood comb. Even though this is not brood, this is a honey super, you still get that chemical buildup in the wax. So I would still probably scrape it. Here are pictures of frames from the supers that have been capped. So on the left, I would call that fully capped. On the right here, I would call that maybe 75. If I cut that into fourths, I would say that's maybe 75% capped. Those are looking good. Again, I love seeing the white. Down below, we're going to get brood boxes. So we've taken off our honey supers, and now we're down into our deep boxes. Sometimes you will have medium boxes used for brood. I don't think I've ever seen anyone use shallows for brood boxes, but usually they have black foundation. They don't have to. You can use yellow foundation. I know when Alex, my daughter, got her hive kit as a scholarship student, all of the foundation was all yellow. And I did want to say, I usually don't move the bottommost box off of that bottom board unless I'm going to clean the bottom board off. There's just no need to move it. So usually, like right now, this time of year, you've probably got a package. You've probably just got one deep, no supers, perfectly fine. I know people will also do this, have the same, just one box when they get a nuke. It's going to be in a deep. You're going to have those center frames from the nuke inside, and you've got your empty frames on the outside. That's perfectly fine. You're going to add your second deep once you get 7 or 8 frames drawn out and filled. And frames 1 to 10 are most likely honey. We talked about this in our beekeeping classes. All the other frames are most likely brood or that brood food. So we will look at each frame if we want to, if that's our stage of learning, or if that's our curiosity level. The brood pattern is something we want to look at. When we have elements of good hive inspection, we want to see the centermost frames in that bottom box to have, maybe they have a honey bridge, then they're going to have some worker brood in those concentric or that target shaped rings. You're going to probably see some pollen, and you're probably going to see some drone cells. And so we're going to try to look at all of those in a bunch of frame pictures that I have here coming up. So I would say here is another style of frame. This is a plastic integrated frame. It's black. And here we're looking at the brood pattern. Again, so I can see from the ages inside the cells that I've got a nice concentric pattern going on. So I am going to move my headshot over there. Okay, so here in the center, we like seeing uncapped larvae. So you can see the white, shiny little C-shaped larvae. I can see, and it's easier when you're in person, but I can see that the larvae are fat, they're wet looking. We don't want dry looking larvae. We want them to be fed royal jelly, and especially when they're little. Going outside from the uncapped, so here's my cursor. So this is all, I can see all those white larvae. And then as I come out here, the larvae should be getting bigger because they're going to be older. And then out here, I can see there's some capped. And then as I work closer to the outside, I can see more capped. Again, it looks like from the color that is concentric. Now I want to say this little area, the cell walls are different depths. That's okay. As long as your comb is the right size, it's okay. The bees are going to make up for that depending on whatever's going on inside that cell. The bees will take care of the young. Don't worry about it. Out here, we've got some new comb and we have some bare foundation. That's perfectly fine. Not a big deal. I think this frame looks good. There's a lot of bees covering it. And then I do want to note, as you go up here to the upper left, again, there's that, you've got the uncapped brood, and then it gets capped and older as you get out. So the concentric rings is going both directions from the center. It's going right and left. Okay, here's another brood pattern. This is on a medium frame, not a deep frame. Again, this is concentric. So we've got here, she laid in the center and then worked her way out. Then the older brood is in the center. And then as the adults emerge, then, the nurse bees will clean up those cells, polish them, and then the queen will lay in those rings as we go out. So sometimes you see the older cap brood on the inside and then the younger brood on the outside. That's perfectly fine. We've also got some pollen or bee bread right out here. You can see the different colors. And then we've got some capped honey outside of that. That looks great. And then I wanted to note along this bottom edge, we've got some bumpy, larger cells. That would be drone comb. That's a perfectly appropriate place to have drone comb on the edge there. And on the sidebar of this frame, I did want to say that's propolis. If you want to scrape it, that's fine. If you want to leave it, that's fine too. So here's another example, nice flat worker comb here, looks great. I can see a little brood comb along the top. That's okay. And there's brood comb along the bottom. Again, this is a medium frame, but again, I would say this would be appropriate places to have drone comb. I don't like seeing a lot of drone comb in other places. So those drone cells are perfectly placed, in my opinion. Now, a lot of times people say, but I didn't see the queen. That's okay. Queens move around, but you know what? Eggs do not move around. Eggs don't move. Black foundation gives you a nice contrast. It helps a lot. Also angling your frame. If you have yellow foundation, if you hold it up and then you tilt it away from you or toward you, that helps a lot. When you are looking for the queen, I can notice her because she's the one that kind of walks different. Her butt, she kind of drags her butt a little bit. And then I have seen Virgin Queen a few times. I think they tend to run. I don't really know a better way to say it. The virgins don't move in the same way that the mated queens do. But anyway, here are these tiny little eggs that you see here in the center. Those look great. They're right in the center of the cells. And then look at that. Trophallaxis, those worker bees are exchanging, they're passing food between their tongues. It's so cute. I don't know what else to say about this. I guess I see a couple drones up here at the top. I think this frame looks fine. I like seeing that frame. This frame looks fine. Again, nice solid cappings, flat, it's workers. There is some burr comb along the bottom. Here's where the wood is, and the bees built there and they built underneath on the bottom. That's okay. If you want to scrape it, you can, or if you want to leave it, you can. It doesn't really matter. I think the bees put it there. They worked hard to put it there, so let's let them keep it there. It might be a way that it makes things easier for them to move around. I don't know. As I work from top to bottom, if I do want to clean that bottom board, here's a picture of mine. It happens to have orange pollen all over it. You might see dead bees on that bottom board. There could be dead larvae, dead pupae. There could be mites on the bottom board. There could be small hive beetles. I would say you can look down through in between the frames on that bottommost box just to see if you need to clean it. Hopefully there's no water. Hopefully it's dry as a bone down there. If there is water, I would encourage you to make sure your hive is tilted so it's a little higher in the rear, so that if there happens to be a chance for water to get inside, it'll roll downhill out through the entrance at the front of the hive. You're going to put everything back when you get down to the bottom board. You'll put that bottommost box back on. You're going to put the frames, again, 3 years old or less are going to be in there. So that means you're going to remove 1 or 2 every year, you're going to remove 1 or 2 every year, or you're just going to add, if you're beginning, you're going to add bare foundation, maybe 2 frames per box every year, just so you can keep some nice fresher wax available. The queen likes laying in that newer wax. But again, you're going to put your boxes back in order, bottom up to top. You're going to put that inner cover back on, the outer cover, and then however you're securing them with straps or bricks, put everything back the way it was, and then take your notes. The hive inspection sheet that you see here, that's my version of the Daydant rip-off or tear-off pad that you can order. You can find a copy of this in the Files tab at the Des Moines Backyard Beekeepers Facebook group. Now, there are some things that you might find inside your hive that were not part of the slides that I showed you a little bit ago. So I'm going to show you some things that you don't have to worry about seeing, not a big deal. And then I'm going to show you some things that I really don't like seeing at all. So sometimes, especially when there's a good nectar flow very early in the summer, you'll see something like the 2 pictures here. And it's bees that it's kind of like they're holding hands and they're just kind of in a chain. That's called festooning. We don't know why bees seem to do that, but again, they tend to do that when there's really good flow and they're building comb. Don't worry about it. I know it looks weird. They don't behave like that all the time. It's only a certain time of year. Don't worry about it. I already showed you a picture of some wonky comb. Here's another picture. Don't worry about it. If you have a frame and you have comb that's not drawn out all the way, there's different depths. Like here's some pretty shallow. Here's some that's not built at all. Here's some that are different sizes. Again, I'm not worried about something like that. If it's spottily built and it's in weird clusters like you see over here on the right, I'm not worried about that. Eventually the bees will work that out. There's some burr comb that's built on the top bars. There's always a gap between the top bars of one box and then the box above it, the bottom bars. So whenever there's a gap, again, you saw some gaps earlier that I'd shown you where the bees had propolis. Sometimes the space is large enough. Okay, sorry about that. I lost signal for a little bit. So I'm going to try to minimize myself, or maybe just move myself around. See if I can share my screen. Okay, again, I apologize. I lost signal for a little bit here. So here's some burr comb. Again, sometimes the gaps inside the hive are big enough that the bees want to build some burr comb. It's not something that I'm worried about. If you want to scrape it away, you can. If you want to leave it there, you can. I will, and I'll show you a picture later when you have a bottom board with the deep side up, or if you're using a slatted rack, sometimes the burr comb is needed to serve as a ladder for the bees to get up and down from the frames. And I think I have a picture of that a little later here. Yeah, but here it is here. On the bottom of these frames, I have a slatted rack on this particular hive. And again, bees use these as ladders. Sometimes they build on the bottom board, sometimes they build them on the bottom bars. This is how the bees travel back and forth efficiently. Again, I'm not worried if I see something like that. Sometimes there's burr comb again on the top bars, and when you rip those boxes apart, you'll have burr comb, and then you have this dilemma where you see these eggs in the center, and you're worried about what to do with the eggs. So here, like, here's an egg that fell out. What did you do? You know, that's something that I don't really worry about. Again, you've got so many more bees down below or up above. It just shows you that bees really like their bee spacing, and it's an amazing thing. Bees are so fascinating. If you want to scrape it, you can. If you want to leave it, you can. Now, the one thing that I worry about and I couldn't find a picture of was burr comb in between the frame. So if you have frame, and then there's burr comb, it's usually because your frames are not usually off. There's like too much of a gap. You need to push those frames in together so that the ears of the frames are touching. And that means you've got perfect bee space. If you don't have good bee space, if the space is too large for their comfort, they will build in the center. So here's another example of some crazy comb. If you want to scrape it, you can. I don't get really worried about it. I feel like the bees are going to fix it. It is something that a lot of people believe you can prevent by adding more wax to the foundation. So if you want to melt and then paint, or if you want to take a piece of beeswax, like a crayon of beeswax, or like those beeswax, I've got some 1-inch bars, you can rub that on the foundation. You can do that if you want. It works for some people. Me, I don't ever get worried about it. I feel like the bees are going to figure life out on their own. Now, sometimes, again, you see things that we didn't really talk about during our lesson, and that includes queen cups and queen cells. So I'm going to show you some examples here. So one way, nice, quick, easy way to check for queen cells is to tip that upper box back like we're looking here. You don't even have to set it up right like I have here. You can just tilt it and take a look. Just look along the length of those bottom bars before you move that box out of the way and see if there's any queen cups hanging down. So what is a queen cup? This is a cup here. Cups, you don't worry about them if there's no larva inside. And just know that there are some types of bees that are very prone to always having queen cups. Now this is a cell. So the cup is the beginning, and then a cell is drawn out and long. And that means you do have a new queen on the way. This one happens to be open. So you can see the tip of it, that cap is open. So there's a new queen running around inside of this hive. She will mate and she will be laying within the month. So if she's already out, I would say don't worry, there's nothing you can do about it. Now, if you see queen cells that are not hatched and they're capped and closed, like the one that you see in the picture here, you're gonna probably, if you're a beginner, you're gonna phone a friend and get help. So if you see a queen cell, you're going to try to figure out what kind of cell it is. And there's 3 different kinds. So there's an emergency cell, the supersedure cell, and then there's swarm cells. They're all queen cells, but they all mean different things. I would say this particular one, I would also want you to kind of look at that brood nest area. So there's capped worker brood. There's also, if you look at my cursor here, it's wet inside instead of course, because there hasn't been a queen here to be laying. The worker bees are filling those cells with nectar. So they're that's called backfilling. That's kind of a warning sign, like alert, alert, swarm coming soon. And here's what traditional swarm cells look like. They're on the bottom. There's a lot of them. They're all the same age. I would also say there's a huge population of bees on that frame. So to me, again, this is where you're going to have to figure out what you want to do. And if you're a beginner, phone a friend. If you are experienced, you're probably going to split this hive. Let's talk about things that we do not like seeing. We do not like seeing drone comb in big patches. We don't like seeing drone comb in inappropriate places. So when you see big patches, a lot of times that means you have a laying worker. If you have only drone comb and no worker comb, again, laying worker, or maybe you did that on purpose because you're trying to flood a drone yard, or you're trying to incorporate some integrated pest management into your practice to control mites. But generally, I don't like seeing drone comb that are in big patches like you see on the bottom here. And there's a couple cells right there in the center. I really don't like seeing that at all. And again, there's nectar in the center here where I really would like to see larvae instead. So I do see some uncapped larvae. I'm just really confused. I feel like this is probably a colony that's on its way out. So I need to fix that as soon as possible. Here's another example. This is all drone comb. This is not flat, nice looking worker comb. I see a hive beetle here. I think that's maybe a hive beetle right there. I don't like that at all. Again, I'm gonna have to figure out some kind of plan to deal with this. This is no bueno. I don't like seeing bad brood patterns. So I can see brood. It's not concentric at all. I also see a queen cell at the top of the frame. That means that it's a supersedure cell. Irregular perforations, I don't know. Do I have any? Oh, I do. Here's so it's got some irregular perforations on it. Typically when the adults are eating the capping away, that they don't usually make a shape like that when they're being chewed out. There's pollen here where the brood is hatched. You see not a lot of worker bees. So again, I don't like seeing this. I mean, this drone cells, those are okay. I don't mind that they're up there. But again, this is a really confusing pattern to look at. I'm gonna have to see what else is going on in this hive. Again, I'm really confused when I look at this foundation here because I can see it kind of looks concentric, but everything's really mixed up. So I can see some smaller larvae, some larger larvae, some capped larvae. Again, I see some uncapped larvae down here, but there's also pollen. And there's some nectar right there, nectar right there. I mean, I see nice and flat up along the top. I see some uncapped here. I mean, I think that's kind of normal, but again, this pollen in the center is really confusing. I expect more regularity, and I'm not seeing that. So to me, this queen's probably failing, and I got to figure something out. The drone comb along the bottom, I think that's fine. But again, this is not what you observe in a nice, thriving, healthy colony. So I don't like seeing that. Here's an extreme example of backfilling. This is like high alert, we're gonna swarm, we need to split this hive or do something. We're gonna phone a friend. I would say if you look at these bees emerging here, so that's a little more normal perforation. I don't even know if that's called a perforation, but that's more normal from the center out. Again, this one emerging center out. It's not like weird kind of crescent shape on that past frame or past slide that I showed. So again, backfilling, I do not like seeing that at all. Here's a quote. I don't know if you read any of the beekeeping magazines, but Rusty Burlew has a pretty regular column. She also maintains Honeybee Suite. And she's just saying, you know, backfilling means you're going to swarm. So if you're a 101 student, I would say call a mentor as soon as you can. If you're in beekeeping 201, you know, you got some more experience, you can combat the backfilling. Just it's more like a prevention thing. But if you see it, you might be able to get rid of backfilling. Kind of, I don't know if not get rid of it, but you're going to lessen the impact of it. If you open up that brood nest area. So you can do that by checkerboarding. We talked about checkerboarding. Again, phone a friend, ask a question on the Facebook group. There's over 1,000 people that can help you out. Just tell them where you're located. You know, even if they're not friends or a mentor, they could be. They could be. I would say this is a frame that I really don't like seeing. This one's not as confusing, but I will say the different sizes of the cells concerns me. If you can see that, I've got just a weird mix of things inside the cells. I've got really dark comb, again, different sizes of cells. I've got some entombed pollen. I've got, I don't know, is this a queen cell here? I've got a drone cell here. Everything's just really mixed up. Yeah, I don't like seeing anything like this at all. Now, hopefully, if you're a brand new beekeeper, you don't have any of this because you've got bare foundation. And then my note down here, Clarence Collison in Bee Culture, he said, so I mentioned that queens don't prefer to lay in old comb. Here, Collison's saying that drones had lower sperm viability when they were raised in miticide laden wax. So you definitely want to, you know, scrape or toss those frames when you have wax that gets older than, I would say, 3 years. I would say this frame looks okay. I don't like seeing a lot of entombed pollen. And so this is a picture from the University of Lincoln, Nebraska. So again, it's fun to look at the larvae, but see these cells here, it kind of looks like a dull matte sheen. That's entombed pollen. Here's a circle inside this oval is where you dug it out, so you can see underneath. We don't like seeing that. Again, the bee should be cleaning that out so the queen can be laying. Here are some more irregularly perforated cappings. They're all different weird sizes. Some of them look like slits. Some of them are just really irregularly round. It could be a brood disease. So I would say call an inspector. Here's the number. It's free to have the inspector come out. I mean, kind of free, that's your tax dollars. Definitely don't like seeing anything like this. And again, this is getting to be fairly dark comb. So I might want to think about scraping this frame or tossing it, not using it, and buying a new one. Don't like seeing laying workers. I talked about this earlier. So inside of these cells, again, so this picture came from eberthoney.com. We've got multiple eggs. They're different ages, different size larvae inside these cells. So when you see eggs, I know we all get excited to see eggs. If there's a queen, she will lay the egg in the center and she will lay one. If there's a laying worker, the laying worker's abdomen isn't as long as the queen's. She can't reach the center. She has to lay her egg up against the side. It's off to the side. It's not in the center. And again, there's usually multiple eggs, different ages in a cell when you have a laying worker. Here's another thing that I don't like to see. This is all evidence of wax worms. Sometimes you actually see the worms themselves. This is usually a storage issue, but every now and then, if you have a weak hive that you've left outside, it's basically being stored outside with a weak colony. So moths are able to enter and lay eggs. So we see cocoons here underneath the top bar. Again, they just little white woolly things. You can see this bar has dents where the cocoons were embedded. And then if you look at the comb, you can see the silk or the webbing that runs underneath between the foundation and the cells. The waxworms eat the wax. They just burrow under, along the foundation. They eat the wax, leaving that trail of silk behind them before they spin their cocoon. You might see larvae under there, and then you can see these dark little birds, that's called frass. We don't like seeing that at all. What we do like when it's winter, we do like seeing bees alive in March. We like to look at them really quick when it's fairly warm and when there's no wind. We're going to watch to see what the traffic looks like at the front. I always think it's funny because I can tell which bees came from where, like which was I got from a swarm and which came from a cutout and which came from a package, because they all act a little different. That's kind of fun. I always look, just at the top. Are there bees in there? Is there food in there? I button it all up and I'm out of there. That's all I do in the winter. I just want to mention that really quick. So if you're one of my 101 students, we are still on. I talked to Susie, March 14th at 1 p.m. Forest Avenue Outreach. I will probably send you a message, just us, with the address. If we want to stay in touch, sign up for my newsletter. You can always opt out if it gets to be too much for you. I send 2 newsletters in April. I will send 2 in May. If you can't make it to a group hive inspection for our class, we usually have a couple minimum during the summer for our bee club meetings. And then it looks like there's a Central Iowa Beekeepers meeting coming up. We just had the auction last weekend, and there will be a winter seminar, I'm pretty sure. I want to wish you all a great season. Have fun with bees. If you've got your bingo cards, fill them out. Again, it's fun to keep bees. I'm glad to have you all. And I encourage you to ask questions if you have them. And this is the end of our hive inspection slideshow. Let me know any comments or concerns. Thanks.